All right, can everyone hear me? Just making sure that this works. Okay, I'll just go ahead and start. My video can't work right now, but yeah, let's go ahead. So yeah, welcome to the Research and Applications of Machine Learning workshop here. A little bit about me first. My name is Haoli, and I am a senior at Seven Lakes High School. I am the senior captain at the Seven Lakes Haoli team, and I've done quite a bit of research and working with computer science and all that. So if you have any questions, I'll link my email at the end so that you can just contact me whenever you want. So I'd like to start off with this quote, which is the most exciting phrase to hear in science and the one that heralds the most discoveries is not just Eureka, but that's funny. So this is quoted by Isaac Asimov. So it's really captures the essence of research because you're trying to experiment and discover, and sometimes you get an unexpected discovery, and that's the essence of research. So let's talk about how we would conduct research. So we need to think of, first off, what interests you, okay? So how I started with my own, I'm just gonna be going through an example of my own research in this presentation, but fields of science that I was interested in. First off, computer science, obviously this is a hackathon, so props to you guys. Yeah, and then also I also wanted to trek into the field of biology, which I have participated in Science Olympiad, Biology Olympiad, Science Bowl, so I want to combine those two interests. And what do you get? You get bioinformatics, which is like kind of a mesh and interdisciplinary field across all of these different subjects, from computer science to statistics to biochemistry. It covers all of this. So obviously, this is still a very wide field, but it still narrows down from all the different scientific fields out there. So what do you want to do here? You want to narrow it down even further so that, because research is research, right? You have to make sure you pinpoint a specific topic and then see where you can develop more. So how did I narrow it down? So I thought that I was pretty interested in computers and computer vision, which is kind of working with images to detect things within the image or anything like that. And that mainly uses machine learning, right? So in this case, I use MRIs, well, as you can see with this MRI machine right here. And I was also interested in oncology, the study of cancer. So I wanted to see how I could combine machine learning, MRIs, and detection of cancer. So what did I get? I got prostate cancer detection using machine learning classifiers, which was kind of the surrounding umbrella of my research topic. So here you can see it obviously is a lot more narrowed down from the field of bioinformatics, as bioinformatics covers like genome sequencing and computer vision and all those different subjects if you would be interested in pursuing. So after this, after I found my topic of interest, I went even further and just looked at background research. Okay, so what is this? You have to have the domain knowledge, which means you have to have the knowledge, fundamental knowledge of your field to make any sort of progress, right? And this is the most challenging part for mostly like any newcomer, because you have to not only understand the fundamentals of your field, but you also have to go very deep into it. So let's talk about first, what exactly is machine learning and how do I get into it? So machine learning is a subdomain of data science. So what is data science then? Data science is the intersection of mathematics and statistics, computer science, and then domain expertise, as I explained, is your specific field of interest. So as you can see, machine learning is just a subset of data science. And let me talk about machine learning a bit more. So essentially what machine learning is, you get a model, a computer model, and you're able to feed in information to train the model so that it can see the data and make predictions off of it. And then if it gets the prediction wrong, it trains itself on the data to see how it can adjust itself to make the correct prediction. And then you use the model to test it and see if your future predictions are even more correct. So it's kind of like human. It's trial and error, right? So except it's calculated trial and error using statistics. So how do we learn the fundamentals of your field of interest? So in my case, one thing I did was watch a bunch of videos. So one channel in particular, 3 Blue, 1 Brown. This guy really introduces high-level mathematics, statistics, and other computational techniques. And specifically, I learned about deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning, and how the different mechanisms work. I'll ask you guys some questions later on in this presentation to make it more interactive and see what you guys already know. Next, I also use MIT OpenCourseWare, another source of videos, assignments, and just like homework things, all directly from MIT's campus. MIT, as you might know, is Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They're amazing at computer science and mathematics, and everything STEM related. So I learned from their linear algebra course, taught by an amazing professor. So I learned quite a bit from that. And linear algebra is also a fundamental part of machine learning because a lot of machine learning algorithms use vectors and higher dimensions so that you will need, like, absolutely need linear algebra for. And you don't even have to learn calculus or any other form of calculus in order to approach linear algebra. Once you finish algebra 2, if you're good enough at that, you can start to look at it if you're curious enough. And Khan Academy is also a great resource for this. Finally, you have to read different scientific journals. In my case, I read IEE, which is a engineering journal. And for my research and for my subject of interest, I read prostate cancer diagnostics, and specifically what parts of an MRI can indicate prostate cancer. So continuing with the idea of reviewing scientific journals, you have to read other papers that are related to your field to gain the fundamental understanding and also get a deeper understanding of what they're talking about, what are the problems in research, and also identify the gaps in research in which you can contribute even more. So you have to first off identify possible issues. So how does a paper work? So there are a few main sections that I'll talk about in the rest of the presentation. The main part is the abstract. The abstract is like a whole summary of the paper, a very dense part of the paper that combines everything written in someone's study. And so you can get an understanding of this paper really, really quickly. So another main part that you really want to focus on when you're skimming through papers and trying to understand what they did, because most of the time papers are really complex if you don't really know the knowledge beforehand. So if you read the future work section, you can see the limitation of the studies, and you can see how you can improve that study and where you can do more research on. So in turn, this does narrow down your topic to a fine point, or I would say to a T, pun there. Okay, so then we go on to methodology. The question here is, how exactly are you going to investigate your problem and experiment? So with your previous knowledge, all the knowledge that you've gained from your background research, your literature reviews, your Khan Academy videos, you can just play with your knowledge, see how you can connect different concepts together that you can provide a direction to go with your experiment. So make sure, first off, plan your steps out, draw like a flowchart or something to indicate which parts are necessary for your experiment, which parts are not, what you're going to spend your most time on, what do you need exactly. So these are all important questions that you have to ask yourself when you're doing the planning stage. So for example, for my project, I worked with a lot of data, a lot of image MRIs. So I use like data extraction from the source, data cleaning, like data storage, data manipulation, model fitting, model testing. So this is just all the, just the source, it's just part of the experiment, okay? So let's talk about, this is where it gets kind of interactive. So one part of my research was this cool thing. So can anyone guess what this is? It's stacked layers. Nice, yeah, CNN. So CNN is a convolutional neural network. What this means, a neural network basically just tries to predict, it's a type of machine learning model, except it's completely unsupervised, meaning that it learns from scratch. You don't really give it a direction. You just give it a prediction that it's supposed to get to, and then by learning how by learning the patterns in which parts are wrong of its predictions, it can backpropagate its layers, backpropagate its neurons, and figure out what the outcome is. So if you, a really great analogy for this is if you think of a brain, okay? Brain, you're learning something, you're trying to correct your errors, and you're trying to get the correct response, right? So that's kind of what it does. And all these different layers, they mean different things. I'm not going to go too much in depth. I'll answer all the questions at the end, so just hold on to that. Okay, so yeah, image inputs, you get all these layers, it goes through all these layers, and these layers are just numerical computations. It doesn't make any sense to us what they're saying really. So there's a problem in machine learning, which is that we don't really know what's going on behind or like any type of neural net really, because it's just a bunch of scattered numbers. So how do we interpret this data? There's been a solution called saliency mapping, which essentially you use a specific part of the neural net to map which parts of the image are most influential to its decision, to see if the see which parts that the deep learning model is actually using to make its prediction. So that's one way of visually seeing what it's using. So that's just a quick explanation of what it is. Let's go to the next. Oh, whoops. Okay, so results and discussion. So after you experiment and then you gather all your data, you get your results, right? So now with those results, you can finally discuss them and analyze, do statistical analysis on them to get significant results, okay? So how do we do that? Yeah, statistical analysis, we can generate all these cool graphs. Um, they're higher level statistical graphs. I won't explain them in detail, but if you're interested, you can always go on Wikipedia, search what a receiver operating characteristic curve is or a precision recall curve is. And you can learn all sorts of stats anywhere if you just Google it on like Khan Academy and all that. And this discussion from these graphs, we can pull out significant data. So as you can see, just for reference, the closer this curve, the ROC curve is to the edge, the top left edge, the better it is of the algorithm. So as you can see, it's actually pretty good here. So with that data, we can try to interpret it and see, and like we can compare different models this way. And this discussion is arguably one of the most important parts of the paper. So yeah, so just keep that in mind. It'll take a lot of time, especially on this part, but it's worth it in the end. So finally, we have the conclusion and future work section. What exactly is the greater impact of your research? And what are the limitations of your research? Because remember, in other papers, that's where you got your investigational problem from. Like by observing the limitations from other people's papers, you can contribute more to the field. So now you're saying to the field, what did I struggle on and what can you help me improve on, right? So let's go through a quick sequence of the entire process. So we have interests, which is very broad, right? Very broad. So we go down to background research, you get smaller. Then we go to literature review, which is even smaller. Methodology, your experimentation, it's very, very specific to your paper. Then we go to results and discussion. You're kind of analyzing your results and seeing and creating a broader sense of what it is. And then finally, you're expanding back to the field to see how your research fits into the field and how it has contributed, right? So that was just the entire presentation. I think this is a half-hour lecture. So we got 9 minutes for questions. I think this is pretty good. So yeah, any questions? I'll just answer the ones in chat so far. Oh, whoops. Oh, okay, misinformation. I got a full hour. Whoops. Okay, well, I mean, attack me with questions. All right, so previous slide. Okay. Okay, and then someone asked about, what is this? Oh, okay, whoops. I haven't used the Zoom webinar chat thing
Okay,
before.
so I'll just read the questions then.
Go ahead.
Will we learn any actual coding in this workshop? I guess since it's over, that kind of already answered your question. Okay, so, how do we make our own data sets?
So with data sets, I use mostly public data sets since, yeah, like public data sets because there's been significant research done on it already. We have a good grounding of how to use data set, but also if you think about it, there's many different ways to approach that data set that haven't been done before. So I use a public prostate MRI data set, and I was able to extract like different types of features, identifying features of prostate cancer within the image, and through different machine learning algorithms and which like regions and things like that. So public data sets are the best option for you. So you don't really make your own, but you can configure the public data set to your own needs. All right.
Okay, there's another question. For your prostate project, did you have to convert the images to grayscale or something, or is there any quicker way to do it?
So the MRIs actually usually just come in grayscale because how it works, magnetic resonance imaging, it's just like kind of a gradient of yeah, it's this gradient from like 0 to 1 or arbitrary numbers range. So it doesn't actually come in color unless it's artificially colored, so it's already in grayscale. And then I just worked with that image data from 0 to, yeah, whatever.
Okay, here's another question. Do you think that your method for machine learning can be implemented into nanotechnology and be used to kill the cancer?
So my project was more of the diagnostic part of machine learning, using machine learning to detect cancers. I haven't really explored nanotechnology very much at all because I work with mostly the imaging sector, but I think it would be possible if you think about it. Nanobots are just things that we program and inject into humans. But I guess if you inject these nanobots and then give them their own freedom to learn their surroundings and learn which cells are healthy or not. But that also gets into ethical issues. So I would caution around that. Yeah, like same with CRISPR-Cas9, the gene editing tool using in humans. That's also very controversial. So I wouldn't be so sure of that in the near future. Any other questions? I think someone asked if calculus AB was good to understand machine learning. I would say definitely have a good mathematical background. I took calculus BC, like well, it's like accelerated version of AB. Um, and I got a pretty good mathematical understanding of that, but it's not completely necessary. Honestly, there's a bunch of Python, like for my research, I use Python mainly. And Python has all these amazing libraries that have these machine learning algorithms, such as with like Python libraries such as scikit-learn. They have a really good library for you to implement um, machine learning algorithms such as random forest, support vector machines, and logistic regressions, and make all sorts of modifications to those algorithms. So you don't really have to type them out raw and know. I mean, it's so good to like have a conceptual understanding of how they work because you have to explain that in your discussion, obviously. So yeah, a good mathematical backgrounding is essential. Statistics is also very essential because you have to analyze your results, and also obviously have a really good background in computer science because you have to implement these in your code. Do you have any other questions?
Okay, there's another question. How did you do web development with machine learning?
So yes, so my pursuits in machine learning and web development were kind of separate things, but you can put them together. So I'll explain them independently first. So with, I'm in high school. Okay, just brief clarification. But I'm applying to college right now. Okay, so back to my discussion. So web development, I got into that because I just started with hackathons last spring. I was kind of bored out of my mind, so I just started learning web development from like Udemy. I learned React.js, HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, the normal front end development, and yeah, I just learning all those web development things. And then I also competed in a few hackathons, won a few with my current startup product Modulus. Yeah, so that was the web development side. Machine learning, I got into it because I was in some. I had a mentor over the summer that helped me really figure out what I want to do in data science, because data science is like very encapsulating. It has very many fields that you can go into because it's so applicable to like finance, to like even literature. You can use like recurrent neural networks to like predict text, or like write, like if you know about GPT-3, which is a new like machine learning model that can generate human text, like respond and like understand and respond in human text, like very humanly way. So machine learning has so many aspects that you can apply it to. So yeah, I mainly learned machine learning to just apply it to my research. So these pursuits were completely separate, but I have seen other research papers when I was doing research that they actually combined their machine learning algorithm as like a backend to a website. So for example, I know there were a lot of COVID websites that were like, they had a front end website and then you can insert an image of a lung MRI, and then their backend machine learning algorithm would tell you the probability that there is either COVID or another abnormality within the lungs. So yeah, it can be combined, it can be separate. It's just whatever you're interested in.
Okay, there's another question. What does CNN stand for?
CNN stands for convolutional neural networks. Actually, since I have time, I'll just explain each part of the convolutional network. It's actually very interesting. Okay, so convolutional neural networks, I'll type it in chat real quick. So that's how it's spelled. And yeah, so 3x3 conv, the convolutional layer here is what you use to essentially kind of make the pixel values within the image into more meaningful values, I would say. Basically, it just goes through the image and shrinks everything to make, okay, because you know the image is made of a matrix of pixels, right? And pixels have values, so it's a matrix of values. So then it just uses something called a kernel, which is a smaller matrix that's kind of acts as a filter to try to filter out more important information from the image. So that's essentially what the convolutional network does. It uses a filter to find more important information from the image. So then batch normalization and ReLU, the rectifying linear unit here is just an activation function to correct the outputs of each neuron in each layer. And you can probably Google up what a neural network in general looks like. It kind of looks like a network, right? It looks like kind of like a spider web. That's kind of horizontal, if that makes sense. But yeah, so this is my own custom neural network, convolutional neural network architecture. It was inspired by another one that was pretty close to what this is, called ExosNet, that was also used in prostate cancer diagnostics. So I kind of based it off of that. But these neural nets can take all sorts of different configurations. And yeah, you can also reorder all of these layers to however you want, because that's like another variable using deep learning research. The arrangement of layers and their sequence determines the performance of your neural net performance, right? So yeah, you just want to experiment with that. And yeah, it's just part of your experimentation. Pooling essentially just condenses the information that you got from the previous layers. Dropout, it kind of reduces the variability within your data. And then the fully connected layers just linearize all the data and essentially shrinks it until it gets to an output, a meaningful output. And and then at the very end, it checks if it's right or wrong. Either way, it updates each neuron between each layer. I mean, not between each layer. Oh yeah, yeah. It updates each neuron in each layer, and essentially just yeah, like if you think of as a if you think of this neural network as a brain, it's essentially just making it smarter, right? So that's kind of what a convolutional neural network does. Let me see if I can. Okay, I can see Q&A now. Okay, cool. So question for data sets, do you just download it and remember the path of it, and then pandas read the path? Having trouble reading data sets when I download it. So it depends on what kind of data set you're actually using. Mine came encoded in a DICOM file, which is because MRIs are images generated over time, right? So it's kind of 4D data, 4-dimensional data. So it has an additional time variable. That means it's kind of like a video, right? A video has a bunch of images of the same thing over time. So I had to store this data, the pixel arrays, as well as the labels for whether there was a tumor or not and exactly where it was. Okay, yeah. So, and then I stored this into an HDF5 file, which is a special type of, it's called a hierarchical data structure. And you can investigate this if you want. I'll just write that in chat so you guys can look it up later. But it's a really useful data structure that you can use to organize your data and efficiently query what you want from your data set. But that requires data extraction and cleaning on your end to make that that data structure. Type that real quick. So that's what it's called. So I guess since you're, I think since you're using pandas, that means you're, I'm guessing you're using a sort of like a CSV file or like a data or like a spreadsheet, right? What's my so Yusuko. So I did this in freshman year. I got to silver. I didn't really pursue it further than that because I was already involved in a ton of stuff, and I didn't really like computer science my freshman year because school computer science isn't the hottest subject. But I have a lot of friends that are in gold and platinum, but it's essentially just doing practice problems, honestly. Knowing your data structures and knowing the big O runtime, because use of code is all about runtime and efficient code, right? Because you see in all the use of code solutions, they have literally like a few lines of code that when you look at your work, you have like hundreds of lines of code for some weird reason. And it's not very efficient. So you want to learn and see how you can make your code more efficient. And this is for use of code, right? USA Computing Olympiad for any of those that aren't familiar with it. Yeah, so just do practice problems. I know that USACO provides like a bunch of previous year's practice problems, and they also have their own training website. I forgot what it was called, but yeah, practice problem, practice. There's really no other way around it. No problem. Okay, do we have any other questions? All right, so another question. I also know like linear regression and have won a couple hacks with linear and logistic regression. Okay, other models to learn next. So just a clarification, linear regression is kind of using a scatter plot and finding the line of best fit through it. And you can calculate other variables such as other statistics such as uh, your coefficient of relationship, uh, R squared values, things like that. You can do a bunch of tests with it as well. Logistic regression is a binary class, or it doesn't even have to be a binary classifier. It could be a multimodal classifier. Essentially, you can use regression to logistic regression to um, kind of decide. Yeah, well, you guys can figure it out on your own, but just know that logistic regressions are a form of binary or multimodal classifiers that classifies the data. Other models, I would say, look into. I'll type this in chat. Uh, Give me a second. So here we have support vector machines. Um, yeah, basically if your data doesn't fit into it basically uses a line and uses that line to divide your data into two parts. One that is like, for example, false, and one that is true. But if it can't effectively divide this data, it elevates your data to a higher dimension, and then uses a line in a higher dimension, which is called a hyperplane, to separate the data in different ways. Another way is random forest. That's another type of binary or multimodal classifier. It uses a bunch of decision trees. Uh, and it uses decision trees to find the best like it uses a bunch of different variables. Sees. You guys know what a binary tree is, right? That's like kind of a fundamental uh, computer science thing. So it uses kind of like a binary tree, except at each node, it has at each like node that has subnodes, it uses kind of like a divergence point to decide if it is this thing or something else. So that's also another classifier that you can use. And this isn't a classifier, but let me check something real quick. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I'm right. Okay, let me get this real quick. Where's the chat? And then finally, we have principal component analysis. And this is a dimensionality reduction algorithm or like statistical model that you can use to shrink your data into having more manageable data, meaning less variables. And I think let me check something real quick. I know that there's like a website that has all these things. I think it's called StatQuest. Yes, StatQuest. They had a really good video index for every statistical thing. Is this the one? I think so. Okay. Yeah, let me just send this in chat as well. It goes over basically all the machine learning fundamentals and classifiers and all those other things, and it gives you specific computer code in RStudio, like the programming language R, as well as Python. So just go ahead and look at that real quick. Okay. we have any other questions? If we don't have any other questions, then you guys should probably go back to programming or whatever you want to do for the hackathon. Good luck to you guys. I'll just type my email real quick here. If you guys want to email me for any questions that you have, yeah, I guess that's pretty much all for this workshop. So thanks everyone for coming. No problem, guys. Good luck.